hola, and marhaba to another episode of Gen Z AMIGAS weekly podcast, where we explore the defining experiences of our Gen Z women navigating life in an ever-changing world. I'm your host, Maha, born and raised in Dubai to Irish and Lebanese parents. And like many of you, I've spent my life moving between cultures, balancing identities. And so today we're diving into a topic that's been shaping everything from what we buy to how we think and even how we see ourselves. And that's TikTok and influencers and shaping Gen Z's reality, or is TikTok just, selling a dream? So whether it's get ready with me vlogs, viral trends, dances, or the latest products dropping, TikTok has been more than just an app. It's in a way been a cultural force, and for Gen Z, the lines between authenticity and illusion and that kind of transparency are getting blurrier as we scroll. And so here's what's at stake. Actually, what I found out is that TikTok has over 1.5 billion active users, and nearly 60% are Gen Z. And influencers are no longer just brand ambassadors. They're our peers, our role models, and sometimes even our mirror. And so the question is, are influencers empowering us, or are we just being sold a curated dream one swipe at a time? So to help us unpack this question and this topic, I'm joined today by two brilliant guests who know this world inside and out: Lana, Kamal, and Celine Mercier, both studying at IE University. Lana is studying Humanities, and Celine is studying Data Analytics and Business Administration. So thank you for joining us, and let's get straight into it. So let's be real. TikTok is addictive, and whoever says it's not is fooling themselves. It's entertaining, sure, but it also messes with our perception of reality, which I'm sure you guys agree with. And we're constantly seeing people our age living what looks like the perfect life, but how much of that is actually, real. So, Lana, I want to start with you and ask you what your relationship with TikTok is like. Do you ever find yourself comparing your life to what you see online?
I mean, for sure. I think social media in general is just one of those things where like it's part of our daily routine. So as bad as it's really bad to admit that, but like it is part of our everyday life and like our daily routine. Like we wake up, check our social media before we go to sleep, check our social media throughout the day, and I think it's really hard to not be caught in this cycle of doom scrolling. I think that's something that everyone like does as much as they don't want to admit it. I'm also like part of that. It's definitely something that like I'm trying to teach myself, is to not compare myself to others, because obviously like I know everyone says this, including influencers, which is like an interesting thing, is that they always say that like social media is just like the highlight reel of their life and it's not like everyone's reality. So I feel like for sure the way that like we are kind of like programmed by social media to like watch everyone's lives constantly and like compare ourselves is just like, I don't know. I think it's really difficult to not compare yourself with someone that like appears to have such a perfect life or appears to have such a perfect like image of themselves, and you know like kind of this idea of like romanticizing your life, I feel like has become like something very trendy or like popular. So I think with that it is like really difficult to not compare yourself. And I know I still struggle with that daily, but it's something that I'm trying to not let affect me as much as like it could. So yeah.
Yeah, comparing. I mean, I'm sure we all do it, and without even thinking. It's kind of all over Instagram and TikTok and all these influencers showing their lives, and it's almost inevitable that we're not gonna compare ourselves, and it brings the question, Celine, I wanted to ask you, do you think these influencers today are actually being authentic in what they post and what we see? And like Lana said, what we compare ourselves to, or is it all about, the aesthetic of it all?
I mean, I think there's always two sides in this. One of them is I think basically the influencers are looking a way to get paid. So they're selling basically what people want to see. So of course they're selling sometimes a lie that people are like, for example, there are some routines I see sometimes, like gym routines, that they don't really do anything. And of course they do it because it seems easier and people are gonna like that. And at the end of the day, the influencer is gonna get views and is gonna get paid. At the end, the influencer leaves thanks to that. And so I think it's really important to be careful with that. But on the other side, I think it has I think a lot of people don't feel alone having social media, meaning that they sometimes can relate, and it can be also a good side and bring like some kind of comfort to a person.
Hmm. So then, would you say that influencers are being more authentic, or is it all about aesthetic? In one word, do you think they're more authentic or aesthetic, or is there kind of an in between? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's an in between, but
Okay.
I don't think it's 100% real, and we shouldn't be comparing our lives or get frustrated if we cannot really do like they show.
Hmm. And Lana, so adding on to kind of Celine's point about what is authentic and how she's saying that there's maybe a kind of midpoint. So, is there any way, or do you ever see on your TikTok feed or Instagram feed, and do you personally know how to separate what's real from what's, fake on your feed? Is there something that stands out or something where you're like, yeah, this can't be true?
That's a really good question. I feel like it is kind of hard to separate what is real and what isn't. I mean, for sure, I feel like, there's always like those vlogs of like, oh, spend a day in my life. And that day could be like something that is sponsored by a brand. So a lot of the times, like these influencers will have like, oh, spend a day with me, like my perfect ideal day. I just saw this yesterday actually. And this girl was just like posting about these like new earphones that she got that was like sponsored, but she was like showing like, oh, so like with these earphones, like I'm running like 10K, or like, oh, I'm like working like all day with my new earphones, listening to music or joining Zoom calls with them, and they're like the perfect earphones, da 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 da. So I feel like that's not a real day in her life. That's just a day in her life with a sponsor. So I feel like sometimes when you need to kind of like distinguish between a day in your life that is real and then a day in your life that is like could be just like sponsored by, you have to come up with an idea so
Hmm.
that the product is relatable to the sponsor that you have. But I think definitely trying to distinguish between the authentic days and the days that are more realist, like more planned, I think is a bit difficult. But I mean, for me, I feel like stories, like when people post stories, I feel like that's a bit more authentic. And then when they post like TikToks or Reels or anything like that, it's a bit more fake just because it's like, they're editing it or they're like cutting it out, adding voiceovers, adding filters, everything like that. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I would
the
say,
line, yeah, the line
yeah,
between reality and curated content is so thin in a way,
yeah,
It's
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
basically
yeah.
invisible. And
Yeah.
so, and whether we realize it or not, it's shaping how we see ourselves, how we define, success or productivity. But, let's shift gears here because it's not just about the content we consume, it's also about the content we create. And in today's world, you don't need a million followers to be an influencer. Let's be real. Micro, nano, and even accidental influencers are changing the game. And with that comes the pressure to curate your life, even if you're not making money from it. So, Celine, I want to start with you. Do you ever feel like you have to, perform on social media, even if you're just posting casually or, act a certain way or, you know, in that sense.
I mean, of course, I think everyone don't doesn't want to post something that people are gonna say like, "Oh, this is weird," or like there's always the normal story, the close friends. I think we all actually we are careful of what we post, no?
Yes.
Because of the aesthetic or what people are gonna think, of course. But also, I think an important point is on the side of like we really don't wanna like I don't know how to say it. Never mind.
Is it something that like when people post on social media, maybe there's a certain kind of thing in the back of your mind saying, "Oh, should I post this? Should I not? Will it be liked? Will it not?" Because in reality, and I'm sure maybe you can add on this point, people are not going to post something that they think is not going to bring any value, to anyone else or to yourself. You post because you want to post it, you like the photo, you maybe like how other people will perceive it and might be funny, you know? Is that maybe what you're getting at in
Yeah,
a
I
sense?
mean, of course, honestly, I don't really care about likes or anything.
Yes.
I think that a lot of people care. I think when we were like 13, 14, we really cared about those things. Now I think it's something we let go.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I think it depends on the person, but I think there's personally, I think that doesn't affect me that much. But I know a lot of people that do, like actually like, oh, I have to post a story or I have to take a picture. When I came back to Mexico, like it's crazy how I don't know, but in Mexico there's a lot of girls that take all pictures all the time. Like if they're the mission of the day was to take pictures and post it on Instagram. I
Hmm.
personally don't feel like that, but I know that there's a lot of people that have this kind of like weird need, no? And
Hmm.
I've also seen in restaurants, I sometimes see like I went once with my mom and there was a table like next to us, like there were girls, like five girls, 27, something like that. They were all looking at their phone and just taking pictures and editing like for their stories. That shocked me a lot. Like, and they didn't speak all the all
The
night,
dinner. Yeah.
yeah, all dinner. So those kind of things, I know that they exist, but personally, I just post because I like the picture. I don't know. I personally I love photography, so that's the thing that I really like. But there is a lot of people that get affected by that every day and have this weird need. I don't know.
Yeah, so you personally, you're into photography, etc., but you've also seen that kind of, in a sense, they're kind of micro influencers. And so, Lana, I want to bring the point onto you. Like, what are your thoughts on the rise of, I mean, I define it as micro influencers in the sense that, they don't have a million followers, but they're posting a lot. They're doing it as if they have those a lot of followers, So do you think it's more authentic on the rise of these micro influencers or just another version of the same game?
Um, I think it's honestly, I feel like it's something that people want to be. So I do think it's kind of like a replica of what is already out there and who already has a lot of followers. Um, so I feel like with micro influencers, I feel like there's some that you can tell that are a bit more authentic and are actually, doing this because like they really like the content that they're making or they're very passionate about something certain and then they want to like share that with other people who also share the same passion as them. But then I also think that they have that there's other influencers who are a little bit less known than like the bigger influencers, so like the micro influencers that are a little less authentic and kind of are just replicating content so that they can try and gain the sort of traction that the bigger influencers already have. So, yeah.
So yeah, I think what we can kind of gauge is we're kind of living under a digital spotlight, even if we maybe don't ask for it. And for Gen Z, that pressure can feel empowering and exhausting. So, how do we move forward in a way that feels more intentional and less performative? And it may not be a question for you guys personally, but in terms of those micro influencers, like we said, and becoming more aware of that, what's real and what's not, and what's less performative. And so I want to zoom out a bit beyond the filters and brand deals and what kind of impact is this culture having on our mindsets, our mental health, our goals for life. Are we chasing dreams that aren't even ours, or are we just reimagining what, success could look like? So, Lana, what's your take on, manifestation culture and hustle content on TikTok? Is it helpful or harmful?
Um, I think it's a mix of both. I think for sure, the whole like manifestation culture, first of all, can be like looked at in two separate ways. I feel like it could be looked at as a form of like, um, kind of like a calming like practice that people can do just so that they can like ground themselves or like kind of, plan out their goals in a way that like makes them excited for their goals. But then I also feel like sometimes with manifestation culture in particular, it can be a little bit misleading or a little bit like, if you do this, it will come true, kind of like wishful thinking. But I feel like if it's something that you are genuinely passionate about or really, really, really want, I feel like of course that can like happen in your life, but that's kind of like you also have to put in the effort. You can't only solely rely on, what a TikTok is telling you to do and how to get your dream life. Like you kind of have to put in the action and the effort to make that possible for yourself. Um, but then I feel like, with like the content that's like, oh, like hustle content, like you mentioned before, I feel like it could be very damaging, but it could also be very helpful and motivating. Because I feel like on one hand, if you're having a really good day and you do feel very motivated and inspired to do something, it's something that can kind of like push you to be like, okay, yeah, like I'm gonna make my day like perfect. I'm gonna make my day exactly how I want it to be. I'm gonna get all my work done, da 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 da. But then I feel like if you have a bad day and you see something like that and you see people that are kind of like striving for similar things that you want and you're not doing any steps then and there to like get that, it could be very like damaging and very like uninspiring in the sense that you can kind of like shut down and not really like want to carry on
Yeah,
with it.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It kind of brings back that like comparison that we were talking about in the
Yeah,
beginning,
exactly. Hmm.
how our, definition of success and what people are doing, and we're comparing ourselves, and like you said, if you're having a good day, it might motivate you to do more, but if you're having a bad day, you're gonna compare yourself and feel, not worthy, So, Celine, I want to ask you lastly, has social media changed, your definition of success, or what you thought your future would look like, or has it done the opposite? Has it had a positive effect or negative effect?
I mean, in my future, like,
Well, in your, in your far future, or in your future now, or what, on social media, how there's all these posts about success and suddenly booming for a new business, or quitting their job and starting a new one and becoming successful, or doing all these freelancing things and not doing the nine to
yeah.
five, all these kind of things. Does it change your perception of maybe your definition of success, or what you want to do in the future, or how you see yourself in your career and how you want to be successful?
I mean, ever since I was little, I always thought that I was gonna go out of uni, start a job, and get a house, and just like I don't know, it was like really squared.
Yeah.
And then in social media, I start seeing that, of course, it has like changed my perspective, but I don't know if in a bad way. I think it has also gave me like a bit of like reality on how life can be. Like for me, it was like really signed, like, oh, you're gonna work, you're gonna after college, you're gonna work, and that's it. Like, and you're gonna get married. But no, I feel like there's so many opportunities. I didn't know that I mean, you could start your own business, you could like sell things like, I mean, there's a lot of ideas that come in social media that honestly inspired me. Like we always have this little dream. Like for example, since I was little, I wanted to open my pizza restaurant. And it was like, no, but I'm just gonna work at a bank and do like my dad did. But why not? Like actually social media showed me that I could do that and there's like no limits. So in this kind of thing, I think it's inspiring, but um we have to be careful because there's a lot of times that what we see is not real, but I think it's really motivating and kind of like really good for us.
Yeah, I think what we can gauge from today is that TikTok, in particular, has those positive effects on us, like you mentioned, in terms of it inspiring us, you know, looking at new ways we can live our lives. But it also can have negative effects, like comparison. And I think, TikTok era, you could say it's wild, it's wonderful, and we can also say it's not going away anytime soon, even though. Yeah, I remember TikTok was banned for maybe a day in the US and then it got brought back. So, as you can tell, it really is not going anywhere. So, that is a wrap on today's episode of Gen Z Amigas podcast. To our listeners, how has TikTok influenced your life for better or for worse? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's keep this conversation going on Climate Penpal Media's LinkedIn and YouTube. Until next time, goodbye, adios, and ma salam.